Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a mighty king named Nebuchadnezzar. He wasn't just any king, mind you, he was the ruler of Babylon, a truly grand and powerful empire. He stepped into his father's very large sandals in the year 605 BC and decided to make Babylon the talk of the ancient world. His father had done a smashing job of freeing them from their old rivals, but Nebuchadnezzar had bigger plans. He was a man with a vision, determined to build an empire that would stretch from the sunny Persian Gulf all the way to the sparkling Mediterranean Sea. And he did just that, a proper go-getter. To build an empire you need a strong army, and Nebuchadnezzar's was one of the best. His first big win was against the Egyptians at a place called Carchemish. That victory put him in charge of lots of land and people, but his dealings with the city of Jerusalem were especially notable. He marched his army there not once, not twice, but 3 times. The first time he made their king promise to be loyal. The second time he took more treasures and people away. It was all a bit of a to-do, with lots of back and forth like a rather serious game of chess across the desert. His final visit to Jerusalem was the most dramatic of all. After a long siege that lasted nearly 2 years, the city walls finally fell in 586 BC. This time, the great temple built by King Solomon was destroyed. A terribly sad day for the people of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar took all the sacred treasures from the temple, things made of gold and silver, and brought them back to Babylon. He placed them in the temple of his own god Marduk, as trophies of his victory. It was the beginning of a long 70-year period when many Jewish people had to live far from their home in Babylon. But Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just a warrior king, he was a brilliant builder, a proper creative genius. He turned Babylon into the most spectacular city you could ever imagine. He built enormous walls around it, so wide that you could race 2 chariots side by side on top. The main entrance was the Ishtar Gate, a breathtaking sight covered in shiny blue bricks and decorated with pictures of dragons and bulls. And for his wife, who missed her green hilly homeland, he built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It was like a mountain made of plants and flowers, a true wonder of the world. What a chap. Now, among the people brought to Babylon from Jerusalem were 4 clever young men. Their names were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, though the king gave them new Babylonian names. Nebuchadnezzar saw they were bright sparks and decided to have them trained to serve in his royal court. Daniel, in particular, had a special gift from God. He could understand visions and dreams, which turned out to be a very handy skill indeed. The king was about to have some very peculiar dreams, and he'd need all the help he could get to figure them out. One night, the king had a dream that left him terribly shaken. He dreamt of a giant statue with a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet made of iron mixed with clay. Then, a huge rock, not cut by human hands, came flying and smashed the statue to bits. He called all his wise men, but none of them could even tell him what he dreamt, let alone what it meant. But Daniel, after praying, came forward. He described the dream perfectly and explained it was about future kingdoms that would rise and fall, until God set up a kingdom that would last forever. The king was amazed. Sometime later, Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps inspired by his dream, built a colossal golden statue about 90 feet tall. He then sent out a command: whenever the music played, everyone had to bow down and worship the golden statue. But Daniel's 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as they were called, refused. They would only worship their own God. Well, the king was furious. He ordered them to be thrown into a furnace that was heated 7 times hotter than usual. It was a dreadful, scary moment for everyone watching. But then, something truly miraculous happened. The king peered into the blazing fire and his jaw dropped. He saw not 3, but 4 figures walking around in the flames completely unharmed. The 4th looked like a divine being, an angel. He called for the 3 men to come out, and they did, without a single hair singed or even the smell of smoke on their clothes. Nebuchadnezzar was gobsmacked. He immediately declared that their God was the true God and that no one should ever say a bad word against him. It was quite the turnaround, a real lesson for the mighty king. You'd think after seeing a miracle like the fiery furnace, the king would have learned his lesson about pride, but old habits die hard, as they say. Sometime later, Nebuchadnezzar had another strange dream. This time, he dreamt of a massive, beautiful tree that reached the sky and provided food and shelter for all the creatures of the earth. But then, a voice from heaven commanded that the tree be chopped down, leaving only its stump in the ground. The dream was a warning, a message for the king himself. Once again, the king's wise men were stumped, quite literally, so Daniel was called in. With a heavy heart, he explained the dream's meaning. The great tree was King Nebuchadnezzar himself. Because of his towering pride, he would be brought low. The dream foretold that the king would lose his mind and his kingdom. He would be driven away from his palace to live in the fields with the animals. He would eat grass like an ox, and his body would be wet with the dew of heaven. This would last for 7 times, which many believe meant 7 long years. Daniel pleaded with the king to change his ways, to be humble and kind to the poor. But the king, it seems, didn't listen. A whole year went by. One day, Nebuchadnezzar was walking on the roof of his royal palace in Babylon, looking out over the magnificent city he had built. He puffed out his chest and said to himself, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" He was giving himself all the credit, forgetting where his power truly came from. No sooner had the words left his mouth than a voice boomed from heaven, declaring that his kingdom was taken from him. And just like that, the prophecy from the dream came true. The king's mind snapped, his reason left him, and he was driven from his palace. He began to live like a wild beast in the open fields. He ate grass and his hair grew long and shaggy like an eagle's feathers, while his fingernails grew sharp and curved like a bird's claws. The most powerful man in the world was brought to the lowest point imaginable. For 7 long years, the great King Nebuchadnezzar lived this way, a wild man in the wilderness. His magnificent throne sat empty while his counselors and nobles managed the kingdom, waiting for his sanity to return. Imagine the sight, the man who had built one of the wonders of the world, now behaving like one of the beasts of the field. It was a powerful and humbling experience, designed to teach him a lesson he would never, ever forget. The whole ordeal was a stark reminder that true power and glory belonged to God alone, not to any earthly king. At the end of the 7 years, something shifted. The Bible tells us that Nebuchadnezzar raised his eyes toward heaven. In that simple act of looking up, his mind was restored to him. The fog of madness lifted and he was himself again. But he was a changed man. The first thing he did was not to boast or command, but to praise and honor the Most High God. He finally understood. He realized that God's kingdom is eternal and that he has the power to set up rulers and to bring them down. With his sanity returned, so did his kingdom. His advisors and nobles joyfully welcomed him back. He was restored to his throne, and his honor and splendor became even greater than before. It was a remarkable comeback story. But this time the king ruled with a new perspective. He was no longer the proud, self-important ruler who thought he had built his empire all by himself. He was now a humble king who understood his place in the grand scheme of things, a proper lesson learned. Nebuchadnezzar even wrote a public letter, a decree sent throughout his entire empire, telling everyone what had happened to him. He shared his story of pride, his punishment, and his restoration, so that all his subjects could learn from his mistake. He ruled for many more years, passing away around 562 BC. His legacy is not just one of a mighty conqueror or a brilliant builder, but of a king who went from the heights of power to the depths of madness, and back again, all to learn one of life's most important lessons: humility. A cracking good story, that.